There's a certain aspect of suffering that I'd like to bring up. Now, there are many words of consolation for those who are suffering. And then there are many people out there suffering, wondering, why did God do this to me? What is God's plan? Now, for those people that suffer and then die right after it, other people wonder, what was God's plan for them when they were given that disease? Because, there's the everything happens for a reason phrase. But really, suffering, it's usually all for virtue. Of course, you can, if you accept the virtue, if you take it as humility, and you don't refuse to accept the suffering, and I guess. But the main thing with suffering is that Christ is giving you an opportunity to become even more like Him. It's all about God seeing His Son in you. I once heard that every human being, with the sufferings they endure, make up for what was lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Now, when I say that, you'll probably think, there was nothing lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Now, wait a minute, I'm sorry. I meant to say, make up what is lacking in the, no, I'm right, in the sufferings of Christ, yes. Okay, now we think of it like this. We become part of Christ's mystical body when we are baptized and receive the Eucharist. We become part of Christ. Therefore, in order to fulfill this part of Christ that we are, we must make sure that we become like Christ, that we must suffer as He suffered, and live a virtuous life that He did. That is how each person makes up for what was lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Christ Himself doesn't lack anything, but when Christ is in us, and there's a part of ourselves that's still hanging on and not wanting to be like Christ, that's the lack. And therefore, we are the lack. We possess that lack of Christ because He's in us and we're not perfect. Therefore, to perfect our bodies, ourselves, we must become like Christ, and that's where suffering comes in. God gives us suffering so we have the opportunity to fulfill our goal to become like Christ in every way that we can. And that's my outlook on suffering, and that's what I have to say about it today.